There it is, Paula.
2 years I've been there.
Yeah, that's it.
Of all the conversations I had,
There it is,
you
Sanford.
never hear anybody bashing anybody.
The body keeps
Wow,
the
that's
score.
what all I hear in Buffalo.
What?
People
Vandercook.
railing against other people, saying other people are unfair
Oh, that's
to them.
okay.
Unfair.
We are.
Hello, everybody. Are we doing it yet? Don't we have a...
The clock started, so yeah.
Okay, hi. Boy, we are so professional.
Now, this is not Mick. This is Nick.
Oh, okay.
I think he's from South Carolina.
Hi, Nick. I'm Paula. This is the Common Book Show, and we were deep in conversation, so now I'm a little disoriented, but that's okay, because I've got a bunch of people here today. Richard is here, and the mystery guest, and there's Paul and Greg, and of course my son Tom on drums. So we have we have
Son
a
on drums.
my son Tom. That's what I said, isn't it?
Oh, you did? I thought you said friend.
No, I said son. So I'm still reading Jane Austen. I've got less than 100 pages to go. It's very hard to read for me because it's a lot of old. It's an old way of writing, and it's difficult. I've been trudging through it, but I got to tell you, it's so much better than that book I was reading by that guy who was a misogynist. So I'm happy with this. Okay, so Jane Austen, my
Here, let's show the people the cover.
the character
There it is.
yeah the character is the main character is Fanny Price, and I had to look up the ending because it was making me so upset that I didn't know if she was going to marry the creepy guy I didn't want her to marry. So I had to actually look it up and do a spoiler because I couldn't read the book. But now it's gotten to the point where she's starting to like the guy that I thought was a creepy guy. But I think she's still going to end up marrying the other guy. So, not that makes sense to anybody out there. But I didn't have anything. I was busy. I've been busy the last few days with my garden, my granddaughter. Gloria had her surgery, and she's doing well. But, she had a little blip. So she had 2 surgeries in one day because they had to go and repair something.
Gloria did?
Yeah. So they had to go back in. So she had to have anesthetic twice in one day, which I was really worried about because it's not so good for your body. But she's recuperating. She's doing well. And I was over there yesterday. I was at my granddaughter's today for a birthday. So we still have Paul with us, who is, how long are you going to be here?
Might be till after September
Really?
That's his next appointment in September.
Where are you staying?
with my brother and my son.
Oh, good. That's good.
Oh, our friend here's from Georgia.
I'm from Georgia State, and I thought this is Mix World. Oh, did somebody have Mix World?
We have to ask Mr. Windsor if
Mr.
he put
Windsor-
Mix World in there.
Did you put Mix World up there? Nick, you're probably a wrestling fan. I'm sorry. Did you like books? Because this is what books and ideas. That's what we're here for. Okay. All right. Well, you're welcome to stay. It might bore you, but that's okay because sometimes a little boredom is good for the soul. All right, Richard, you start with something because obviously I'm just ranting here.
Interesting essay on the history of technology.
Okay.
And the hypothesis of this author is that the people who actually have affected our lives, they didn't do much inventing usually. But what they've done is they've looked at the inventions of their era and they put them together. And usually it required putting 3 inventions together to come up with their idea.
Okay.
I thought this was really fascinating. So I'm going to tell you 3 inventions. And if you were living at the time, let's see if you would have come up with the idea, okay?
Okay.
You just found out that railroads now have the power to ship goods all over the country. You just found out that items are no longer manufactured by one person sitting alone in a shop, but in an industry.
Okay.
And you have discovered that paper can be mass produced and very cheaply and put into a book.
So did this person?
So this person
yeah.
looked at these 3 things and said, I got an idea for a business, and was wildly successful.
Newspaper.
Nope.
Was it something about transporting the wood to paper mills where they would produce the paper?
No, not about transporting the wood. You want to know? You
Yeah.
want to know what was invented?
Wait, not yet.
All right.
I want to think. So I'm putting a train.
Paul likes a puzzle.
Yeah.
So you're going to need a train.
We've got a train, all right, and we got paper and mass-produced in
Yeah.
mass quantities of
Yeah.
paper.
Or mass-produced goods.
Paper goods.
Well, no, like shoes could be made in a factory, not by one guy sitting in a
Right,
basement.
right,
Yeah.
right. So-
okay.
But this has all got to do with paper, though.
No, paper's 1/3 of the equation.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah. One. So the paper thing, and that, but you said books too. So there was something about books. You said
No, I said that paper was made very cheaply.
yes.
And you could take all this cheap paper and put it into a book.
Okay.
money.
Books of money. I like that.
No, I meant it all has to do with money. You know,
Yeah, of course.
but they didn't invent money.
So if it has to do, well, there's no way that the train could be incorporated into a manufacturing model. I'm guessing. So the paper and the manufacturing, that makes sense together because there is a if you're manufacturing the paper, there's different people like on an assembly line taking care of that aspect. So, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he is manufacturing paper and shipping it all over the country for books.
Amazon.
Amazon. That comes a little
I
later.
have the
Yeah.
3 for Amazon, but that's later on.
All right. Yeah.
You know what this? You know who said I can put these 3 things together? Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck.
Sears and Roebuck.
Oh, the catalog.
They made a cheap catalog,
They did, yeah.
Wow.
right? Which they
Right.
gave away practically for free.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was free.
People
yeah.
poured over it.
I remember it.
They made the goods in the assembly plant, and they put it on the
Oh.
railroad.
Okay.
So you could, for the first time, you could get anything by looking in that catalog.
And they ship by railroad.
Yep.
Huh.
I was like, remember brand names?
Brand names.
Brand
In
yes.
names. I
Centuries.
remember
In
that.
Century, you could go to catalog.
Yeah,
and you can,
Century.
I remember going to brand names and getting things.
I think that's coming back. There's going to be no more brick and mortar. You order from your computer. You go to the store, pick it up. They bring it out to you. You won't be able to browse anymore. That's what I think is going to happen.
Eventually, I think it will have to happen unless they've got robots that are going to run the stores.
Well, they already they do now.
Wow.
Well, maybe when you go, what he's saying, when you go to the store, a robot brings it out to you.
Right. No
Yeah.
more people. It'll be you pre-order it just like McDonald's or anywhere
Well,
else.
I mean, basically, you're browsing when you go online to buy something.
Right.
Like, say, you're looking for, like, my sister right now is looking for a small round table for a corner in her house. And when she goes online, she, puts that in the search
Right.
box and she comes up with, like, Wayfair and, Walmart and all these other places, and they give her the best fit for that search.
Well, that's what
So
we're
you're
saying.
browsing,
Well, no, that's what we're saying, but you're not going to be able to physically go in the store and browse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be all online. Oh, I like that, and they'll send it to you.
The connection is
Yeah, but
lost.
but I like
the
but-
intimacy.
Yeah, but what I like is the tactile. Like if I'm, especially clothing, if I'm going to buy
There you go.
an article of clothing, I want to know what it feels like before I buy it. Oh, speaking of which, I forgot to bring that shirt again. So I want to know what it feels like against my skin before I buy it, because I just like the way certain things feel, and I don't like the way other things feel.
And we have a guitar player here. It would be kind of weird to buy a guitar from a
Yeah,
catalog.
It's so important in any musical instrument.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to play it. You have to feel.
have to
Well,
touch it,
like
yeah.
a lot of
Touch it.
places,
It's-
they'll let
yeah.
you order it. You try it. You don't like it. They send it back for free, and you can exchange
Yeah.
it for something
Do you
else. That's
know?
what it'll
Do
be
you
like.
know what happens to all that stuff that people return
they
to
toss.
Amazon? They don't toss it, but
Well, they sell it,
They
yeah.
sell it in big bundles
right.
to resellers.
Right.
So and
They bid it
now
out, yeah.
apparently I saw someplace on the news where it's not going to be free returns anymore for Amazon. There's going to be a charge for returns.
But also shopping is a it's a human connection experience. It's
Like a
a social
marketplace,
it's a social
yeah.
experience. That's the word I'm looking
Like
for.
the mall.
It's-
Everybody goes to the mall.
Yeah, and I think we're losing that. We're losing our humanity. I think as we become more and more
Mechanized.
mechanized and digitized and distanced and detached, and
Will that
That's-
cause an increase in mental illness?
it already has. And I think it's just going to get worse, at least from what I can see.
Yeah.
I can say as a teacher for sure that as cell phone dependency increased, there was a parallel line of an increase in anxiety and an inability to cope with things that 20 years ago it was assumed that you'd be able to cope with that if you're 14 or 15 or 16, and now that's no longer something we can safely assume.
Well, I
Can you
got.
imagine if they shut down the internet? What people would?
Yeah,
suicide
any of
would
us. Can
happen
you?
everywhere.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I have news for you. That's one of the. That's one of the things I thought about when I was reading this book, the book about post-traumatic stress, is
Yeah.
that the earliest years as being a child, if your parents are not connecting to you on an emotional level, if you're not getting that connection, it is causing disconnects in all the
Yeah.
way you think and the way your body works.
Yeah.
So it's causing all this disconnection. And now all you see when you go someplace is people are on their phone like this, or kids are trying to talk to them, and
Yeah.
they're-
Everybody's disconnected.
and it's going to cause more
Yeah.
emotional problems for children to have their parents disconnected by the phone.
Yeah.
Now, there was a cartoon in the New Yorker, which on the one hand is humorous, but on the other hand it's tragic, where a parent says to the kid, he says, "You're 8 years old now. You no longer have to come out and ask us any questions. You can just text us."
It's
Or Google
see,
it.
you could see the tragedy in that
Yeah, the
cartoon,
tragic
can't you?
irony.
well,
yeah.
it's darkly funny. It's not. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it happening with people and their children
I'll
all the
move your
time.
thing away.
I see it happening all the time because you go to a restaurant or something, and
Yeah.
the kids are kind of like in their own world, and the
Yeah.
parents are on their phone, and the kids want attention. Oh, and that was the other thing it said is like you know how well if you have children, or if you know people with children, the kids are perfectly fine as long as their mother is not engaged with something else. Like, as long as the mother is there and she's paying attention to what the kid's doing, the kid is fine. It gives them a sense of connection and safety. But I have always noticed this. As soon as I got on the phone, my daughter wanted all my attention, because they feel that disconnection, and they feel that you are no longer paying attention to them, and they're in danger because they're not being watched. And or else you're in the house with somebody else, and you're an adult trying to have a conversation, and the kid keeps bothering you, and that's because they don't feel safe, because you're not
Disconnected.
right. They're disconnected, and you're not paying attention to them. So I'm learning a lot from this book.
It's funny because when you talk about the kids, the disconnection. So where I'm at, it's a whole different scenario. Like, the kids are out; they're not in front of a computer or games and playing. They're outside playing. Families all together. Everybody's walking around or in the parks or
Yeah.
it's a different scenario over there than it is here in the States. So
Well, maybe Canada will survive, and the rest of us will fall apart.
I don't know. I think it's the area that I'm in. Not so much like if you're in Toronto, I'm sure it's the same as it is here. But if you go farther out,
Yeah, more
it's a
rural.
whole different different thing. They're into sports. They're out playing. They're out doing, things that they should be doing outside when we were kids. You had a stick and a rock and you were good for the day. Today, forget it. If they don't
Yeah.
own $10,000 computer or something, they're not happy.
I saw an interview from the late 70s with Larissa Shepitko, who was a great Soviet Russian film director, and she died a few months later in a car accident. Brilliant woman. She made some great films. The Ascent is a masterpiece, World War II film. Brilliant movie. And she was asked a question by the interviewer, and he said, what do you think about what are the biggest challenges humanity is faced with? And without hesitation, she said, retaining our humanity as our technology becomes more and more sophisticated. And I think now, however many years later, 50 years later or whatever, 45 years later, we're experiencing that, now.
Yeah, and I think it is a natural progression, but I don't know how it's going to affect us as human beings, like our humanity. I'm not sure how that's going to play
I think I
out.
remember a movie. I don't know if it was an Alfred Hitchcock movie or one of the Orson Welles or whatever. But as evolution happens, the human race, people will be born with one finger, because all they got to do is just push a button. They don't have to do anything else in their life.
Well, the thing is, the problem with what's happening is our technology has evolved faster than the human being has evolved.
Oh, sure.
Human beings evolve very slowly, and I don't know how. I don't think we'll ever catch up, and that might be our demise, really. So is anyone reading anything that they want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm still reading Marco Polo, which is amazing.
I know, I love that book.
And I finished Mary's Monster.
Oh,
by
yeah.
Lita Judge. What a beautiful little book. It's actually written for young adults, but it has, as you saw, it's got pictures, right?
Right.
And it's about, I had no idea what the amount of trauma, talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and how to cope with it.
Yeah.
For her, writing Frankenstein was a way of coping with her pain in her life.
Mm-hmm.
This woman, I think if most of us had gone through her experiences, would have committed suicide. She was abandoned by her father and sent off to Scotland because he didn't want to deal with her after her mother died. Her mother, who was Mary Wollstonecraft, the world's first feminist, probably, died as a result of complications from childbirth. She felt guilty about it. She got involved with a married man and started sleeping with him, who was Percy Shelley, who was a notorious guy. He was an atheist. He was very open about his views, and he was shunned publicly. Nobody was published his works. She ran away with him when she was pregnant. Her family rejected him with her sister Claire, her half-sister. So the three of them lived together. He started sleeping with Claire, and
The
Mary
first
Shelley.
throuple.
And Mary felt rejected. Mary lost her first child. She lost her second child, and then her third child. And then she almost died from complications from a terrible, what do they call that, miscarriage, right? The wife of Percy Shelley committed suicide because she couldn't bear that Mary and Percy were together, all right?
Yeah.
And then Fanny, her other sister, committed suicide, Mary Shelley's sister. So she felt such despair. And when she was in Geneva, Switzerland, in this villa called the Via Diodati, Byron, who was also a really notorious atheist and free love proponent and an opium addict, and Percy, her husband, was a manic depressive. He was really depressed and he was taking opium. On a bet, he said, right, this book of ghost stories I'm reading sucks. Let's each write a ghost story.
Yeah, I remember that
And
story. Yeah.
Mary Shelley started to write. And can I just read very short
Sure.
little excerpts
Yeah.
from some of the
That's-
things that she says?
Yeah.
And the quotes are taken from her journals and her diaries.
Yeah.
Her father always promoted this idea of women's rights, but wouldn't allow that for Mary. So she says, Father promised freedom, love, and equality for women. But for me, it seems he has locked the door on any future beyond selling books, because they worked in this little shop that
Yeah.
sold books, you know, and he didn't want her to be like her mother. And then she says, "Thank you. I am 17. Already I am the daughter to a ghost and mother to bones." So, you know, she just writes this
Yeah.
this feeling of deep despair. And where does she? Oh yeah, when she meets Lord Byron, her sister Claire, I'm just very short. Claire insists I come with her to meet her new friend, Lord Byron, who has connections with the theater. "Don't worry," she says, "he's even more scandalous than we are." So, you know, he had a reputation.
Yeah.
So these were the kinds of individuals she was associating with. And then the last thing, she writes who her monster was, who this creature was in the novel. And it says, "I am an exiled girl who feels so rejected by her father, she must create a family from ghosts. I am a poet, her husband, Percy, who feels persecuted because society loathes him for his beliefs. I am a sister, shackled, her sister Fanny, who committed suicide, shackled by illegitimacy and despair, lying down to die alone. She overdosed on opium. I am an abandoned wife, that's the wife of Percy, who committed suicide,
Right.
standing beside a river, no longer able to endure living. I am the rage and shame that burns like embers through you, Mary. I am the words torn from your mind until they pulse like a beating heart. I am your creature." So
Wow.
she felt that,
She
you know,
took all those aspects and she put them all
yeah,
together.
it was her way of coping with the pain. And what you were saying about trauma and finding ways of dealing with it, it seems to me that that was her only
Well,
way
You know,
out.
and
Right.
the one thing that popped into my head as you were reading this is I was complaining to Greg, and I think I may have even mentioned it to Richard, that the most traumatic episodes of my life, when I'm writing them down,
Hmm.
they're flat. They're so flat because they
Unemotional?
right, they're unemotional, and I can't flesh them out emotionally. And one of the things that with the trauma, like with Mary Shelley,
Yeah.
is that it because it desensitized me, and because I was dissociated. When I go back there in my memory, the same thing happens, and it's flat. I can't flesh out the emotions from those situations.
Yeah.
And it just drives me crazy. So, you know, I don't know if there's a way to get that. This doctor is saying there is a way to get that back, but you've sort of got to re-traumatize yourself. But it sounds to me like she had access to those. She didn't repress them. She had access to them. She had the emotional components in order to express herself, to get those words out.
Yeah.
Because even in the book it says that if you have something really traumatic that happens, there aren't words. It's only you only remember it in pictures and sensation.
Yeah.
You can't place words in it. But it sounds to me like she managed through all of that pain and trauma to keep her emotions intact.
Somehow.
Yeah. And that's what made that book so great.
Yeah, I
That
agree.
you really feel for that monster. You
Yeah.
really do. I cried.
Yeah,
you know?
I was very affected by it when I read it. I was very young. I was probably 11 or 12 when I read Frankenstein, and I could
Yeah.
identify with that pain because of some of the traumatic things that happened in my life when I was
Yeah,
a
well,
kid.
that's why I read Oedipus Rex over and
So,
over again. It
there
made
you go.
It made
Wow.
my life feel so much better.
Talk
It's like,
about tragedy.
It's like, oh,
The Greeks
God.
don't mess around.
I feel so much better. At least I didn't marry my mother and gouge my own
And gouge
eyes
your
out.
eyes and kill your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a hell of a story. Wow. Oh, the other thing I'm reading, and I'm going to make this real quick, from Marco Polo, I was fascinated. Kublai Khan, the great Khan, who
Yeah.
Marco Polo says was a genius. Like,
Yeah.
he's one of the greatest rulers who ever lived, and I'm going to give you all this evidence. He was the sixth Khan, descended from Genghis Khan, and when each Khan would die, their bodies were buried in a special place, and it was a long journey. Everyone who was encountered along the way was put to death and buried. It
Wow.
was just part of the
I don't
ceremony.
remember that,
And
yeah.
one of the Khans 200,000 people were executed to commemorate his death because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Where the funeral procession is coming, you cannot live after you see that. That's how great the Khan was.
Wow, I don't remember that at all.
And when they talk about his greatness, the Lord of Lords, and Mike, it's just like so exalted, the language that they used.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't imagine living in a
But
time
that's how.
like that.
But that's how the letters were to rulers.
Jesus.
If you ever read any of the letters to rulers from ancient empires,
Yeah.
they always start off with all that like, oh, noble, brilliant king of majesty and grace, before you even say hi. You know, it's like, oh this, oh that.
Yeah.
And they just pour it on like
Yeah.
crazy, and then it finally comes down to, you know, I'm going to be paying a visit to your, you know, realm,
Yeah.
and, you know, I'd like to
Yeah.
have a FaceTime with you.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
but
With your greatness.
those letters were just, I mean, and I always thought, wow, is this why we developed writing for this? You know,
Yeah.
it seemed really, really out there, ostentatious.
All that fulsome praise. Yeah.
But all right, so Greg, you're reading something that you've been interested in.
No, I'm writing something that I'm very interested in.
I know you're writing
How to-
something.
How to Emotionally Satisfy a Woman, which I already wrote the book. And I want to do a companion video. I told you this before.
Yes.
Instead of doing Siraki Sterlites, I want to do have Tom video record 1 or 2 women every month talking about how they can be emotionally satisfied by a man, or how they have been emotionally satisfied by a man, like Paula, Pam Swartz, Gwen, Beth Kennedy, Connie Caldwell. And the only thing I want to do differently about this video is that I know how these women are also, all of them.
That's
Hold
one
on,
way.
hold on,
that's-
That's
hold
one
on.
way not to satisfy a woman,
Yeah.
Greg.
No,
Exactly.
you
Don't
haven't heard what I'm
hear
saying.
that.
I haven't
That-
finished my statement.
Okay, go ahead.
No headsets. I want to use a boom.
Oh.
I want to use a boom mic because I know they're all going to complain later. Oh, the headset. Oh, when I did my hair up. Am I right, Paula?
Well, that's true.
That's all I was going to say. You all jumped on me. Jesus
Well,
fucking Christ.
Because
Sorry,
it
Greg.
did sound bad there at the beginning.
But you didn't let me finish, did you? But anyway, so I want to have a boom mic, and of course, mystery guest. If you're available some Saturdays,
I can do the sound?
Well, you can do the boom.
The
Yeah,
booming?
yeah.
Yeah.
But Tom's the genius over here, so we're going to ask Tom if he would mind doing that instead of Siraki Sterlites. Would that bother you, Tom, or not?
Not at all.
Okay. 'cause-
Yeah, and you get
thanks.
you get to hang out with
Yeah, that would be
more
fun.
chicks than me.
Yeah. Oh, and Lucia said she's interested in doing it, and Nancy Parisi, and
And Pam, you said too.
Pam's
Yeah.
interested. Connie.
You think CeeLo would want to do it?
The only thing CeeLo would want to do it, except she might say because of Screen Actors Guild she couldn't do it, even though it's not acting. It's a documentary. She did the Greg Sterling show here, or no, she did Siraki Sterlites here when she was already in Screen Actors Guild. So maybe she can do it. But Tosca.
Did you ask her?
No, I didn't ask her yet,
Okay,
but I'm
all
saying normally she would be, ready to do it. So
Colleen O'Mara, would she do it?
oh, she said yes too already. So that's like the main 10 people, and so we'll take like 5 sessions or whatever, 5 or 6 sessions on a Saturday instead of doing Siraki Sterlites would have.
Sure.
The only thing I definitely don't want to have the boom though.
Okay.
I mean, definitely want to have the boom. No,
All right,
no
that sounds
headsets.
good.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for letting me speak my piece, Paula.
Well, I'm glad you did, but I thought you were reading something that you really enjoyed.
I'm reading my own book and how great it is. I've been reading it over and over and over. I'm learning a lot from it. I think Paul needs it.
I have to see this one.
Even Paul's interested in this one.
I want to participate. What are you talking about?
You want
You want to satisfy some women emotionally?
Hey, whatever works. You know.
Yeah, well, that's
I have a reputation to uphold, you know.
that sounds good.
That's true. You do. Now,
Yeah.
but what is the reputation exactly?
That's fizzled a long time ago. So.
Well, I don't
He
know.
told me,
The
Paul
Playboy,
told me
the Playboy
earlier,
advisor. That's the one.
Paul and I were discussing earlier about abortion,
Uh-huh.
and he said, killing a unborn baby is like stepping on a spider. And I
Well,
said,
wait a
well, that's
minute.
not going to
He-
endear you with the ladies. And he said, well, I'm past that. I'm no longer.
Right.
Right.
I don't. I mean, I understand
Well,
what
wait,
you're
wait,
saying.
wait. But he it's over embellished.
Yeah,
You know how that
okay, yeah.
goes. So I'm saying, he's saying, well, conception. So okay, so the sperm hits the egg, then the egg it divides, and you got a couple cells. All I was saying, those couple cells are really no different than a drop of blood. It's a couple cells. There's nothing happening there.
Yeah.
So that was my idea
Yeah.
of abortion, where
Yeah.
he's got it over embellished.
Yeah, no,
It's not like it's 8 months and it's okay, we're going to abort it.
I'm still curious at what all these people, the right to lifers, are going to do with all the extra babies. That's what I want to know. You know, what's going to happen to those babies?
Give them a cell phone.
Because there's a lot. There's a lot
That'll
of there's
keep
a
'em
lot
busy.
of kids that are in orphanages and in foster care who could really use some nurturing. What are they doing about them? Nothing.
Not much.
So are you
No,
pro or-
I
Once
couldn't agree with you more.
I am.
Paula.
It would never be my choice to abort a child for me, but I want everyone to make that decision for themselves.
I agree.
I agree too. There's an awful lot of unwanted children in the world.
Yeah, and it would never be my choice, but I want everyone to be able to make their choice. And you know what? Until
There's extenuating circumstances too. for a
well,
lot of that.
there are. There's definitely. But the other thing is, it changes your entire life. I mean, if you're practicing birth control and you get pregnant, you did your due diligence,
Right.
and then you have to pay for that mistake for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
You know, that doesn't compute.
No.
But yes, anyway, that was. Are you involved in any reading these days? You're a
As
visual.
far-
You're a
yeah,
visual person.
I am, or internet. I mean, I don't generally pick up a book and read a book, from front to back. But
He sent
I'll
me.
read-
He sent me a Twilight Zone where you take a picture and it tells the future.
Yep. It's a camera that takes a picture that tells the future.
Ah, that's interesting.
It's
Oh, it's a Twilight Zone episode.
it's a Twilight
Yeah.
Zone episode.
Right.
Yeah. And every time they took a picture, it would happen, and the picture would come out, and they'd look at it. Oh, and then it happens. So they were. The whole thing is they were only allowed so many pictures, and there was a couple left, and you'd have to see the episode. I don't want to explain it all in case you want to see it.
Oh
but
yeah, I like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
I don't.
I always did like Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I like
Alfred
I like
Hitchcock stuff. all
Very
that.
good ideas, interesting concepts.
Yeah.
Well, I tried telling him that that's related to the latest Black Mirror episode, Joan is Awful. Have
Oh.
you heard about that?
I wasn't familiar with
Much more sophisticated version of the camera idea.
Yeah, I haven't. I've only seen a couple episodes of that, and I don't remember. There was something that really turned us off. There were a couple that were good, and then
The
something.
pig fucking.
The pig fucking. Yes, that was the one.
Season 1, yeah.
Yeah, that was. it just repulsed me so much that I couldn't go back. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead with the Black
So
Mirror.
this Joan is Awful is this woman is a human resources manager at an internet company.
Yeah.
All right. And when she goes into work, her assistant says, "You're going to have a bad day today because on the schedule today you have to fire Mary. She's coming in to see you. And I know you don't like firing people, but that's your job." So she sits down. Mary comes in. She gives Mary the bad news. Mary breaks down, starts crying. Joan says, "Well, we just got to cut costs." So they leave. Joan comes home. She says to her boyfriend, "I had a horrible day today. I don't want to do anything. Let's just sit down, sit in front of the TV, and watch some Netflix."
Mm-hmm.
So
Netflix and chill.
I didn't know this, but Netflix, it like gives you a menu,
Yeah.
and you can like keep scrolling until you find a show you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, "Look, Joan is Awful, and that woman has a streak in her hair just like you." And she goes, "That is weird. My name is Joan. The show is called Joan is Awful. I got a streak in my hair." She's, "Let's check it out." So they check it out. First episode. "Well, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're going to have to fire somebody today." "Okay, send her in." Woman breaks down, but the dialogue is not exactly as it happened in real life. It's been modified to make Joan look worse.
Wow.
So what happens is she goes, this is weird. Where did they get this? And then she's watching the episode, and she goes back home, and she says to her boyfriend, I had a tough day today. Let's just sit down and watch Netflix. So the actress sits down. Joan is awful, with a different actress playing the part of Joan on the TV in the episode. You see the layers?
Well, it's
So in other words, so Joan is awful. There's the real Joan.
yeah,
Then there's the person playing her on TV.
yeah,
Selma Hayek.
yeah.
But when Selma Hayek watches it on TV, Kate Blanchett is playing Joan.
Oh, I see.
So there's layers upon layers here.
Oh, it's like alternate universes or something. Like like universes that all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I watched
Promise-
it.
Oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
see something different. You watch it, you see a different actor. You watch it, you see a different actor. Right? Same.
What's the premise of that show? If
Of
there
the
is
of the whole series?
Yeah, what's the basic
How
concept?
technology is affecting our minds,
Okay.
you know?
Is it from what you're telling me? It sounds Twilight Zone-esque, like
Many people
supernatural
are
or
saying that, yeah.
Well, is that your impression?
I would say it's more
Science
like
fiction?
somebody who, this guy who wrote the series, who's called Charlie Booker,
Okay.
he strikes me as somebody who paid a lot of attention in college to media affecting our minds. And that has inspired him to write all these stories.
Okay.
So there's one writer for all the stories?
I think so. Would you know the answer to that, Greg? Does he write all the stories?
I'm not sure. Don't know.
Because Rod Serling used to hire people.
I would think, Richard, you could probably use the computer like you usually do and check it out right now and get back to us because you do that a lot during the show.
Is that something that you would appreciate?
Yeah, that you would go to the internet and see whether he writes all the episodes.
Okay,
or
so-
he has other collaborators.
so
I thought
does-
I was kind of guessing he had other people also write, but it seems like it'd be a big workload for him to just write every episode
I
completely.
would think that.
alone.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of
I would think
episodes.
that because they're like mini movies.
Yeah.
So I would think there's other writers, but I'm not positive. If he is doing it all himself, he's really impressive
Yeah.
because he's
Wow, he's got a lot of ideas for sure.
a lot of ideas and a lot of
Sick, twisted mind.
like pig fucking.
Well, didn't Vince Gilligan write all of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul?
Well, you would know that.
I think he had
you would know
writers
that.
he worked with, but I think he was.
You know
the
what though? I think there's
predominant-
like a supervising writer, and they, you know,
they
That's
have
kinda like-
a team of writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that's-
probably. I mean,
Yeah,
you would
it's
know better than us. But.
The majority.
wow.
Oh, the majority, right? Kind of like Rod Serling was the majority, right? Wasn't he the majority?
I don't know.
Why don't you check on there and
I
see if
don't
Twilight
know.
Zone he did the majority? I think he did the majority
Okay.
with Rod Serling. Because a lot of times when you watch it, it says written by Rod Serling at the end.
Ah.
He cranked him out, I think.
And and in his introduction, he would usually say, "And today we are graced with the presence of so-and-so writer." He would always give credit to the writer. You ever
Yeah.
notice that on a lot of episodes?
No, I never noticed that, but I believe you.
I saw an old talk show where Rod Serling went on with young writers, and they just discussed how to write. It was fascinating. It was, and they started writing a story together, and Rod Serling would say, "That's good. Now, what else would he do? What else would you say?" And they all contributed. It was really cool. It was like an old black and white 1960-ish.
Yeah, that sounds.
It was very cool.
Well, it says here that Rod wrote 92 of the episodes. But the question is, what were the total number?
Yeah. Well, you can look that up too.
Look that up.
How
too.
many seasons and how many episodes?
How many episodes were there? 92. It was 92. The majority was it 51%? Or
Okay, so total number of the
Right.
Twilight Zones.
Well, every week.
156.
Oh,
So
well,
that's
Okay, so
Majority.
the majority, yeah.
that is a majority.
There was another show you might not remember. Do you remember One Step Beyond?
Yep.
Was it all
The
based
only
on
one.
one
one
writer?
step
John
beyond.
John Newland was the guy who introduced the show, but I look it up.
It's our research assistant.
Anthony Newland or John Newland? One Step Beyond. It'll tell you.
One step.
Okay,
beyond.
so we need to know the main writer.
And the conceit of that show, although it wasn't true, the story you're about to see is true. And it was based on something that actually
Right.
happened, and it was, but it wasn't. So it was a really
Well,
sort of a weak sister to Twilight Zone, but in some ways I liked it just as much and at times better.
There was another show
yeah,
too.
they say
and
who
I
is the creator,
Okay.
but they don't say who is the
Who's
writer.
the writer? They
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh.
There was another show like the Twilight Zone that was around for a while. That was weird episodes like that. Oh, that
Outer Limits.
the Outer Limits.
Outer Limits, yeah.
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 And of course, there was Night Gallery, which is his later show, Sterling's later
Mhm.
show.
Yeah.
Night Gallery.
I met a guy in the 70s,
Who sang the blues?
and he hitchhiked a lot,
Uh huh.
and he got picked up by Rod Serling.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. must've
Wow,
been
that
trippy.
sounds like a Rod.
like a Twilight
that
Zone
sounds like a
episode.
Sounds
Twilight.
like a Twilight Zone episode. Yeah.
And he said he told him during the ride how much he appreciated his work. And this is the thing I don't get, because Rod said to him, "Well, I'm glad you appreciate it because I hate doing it." He says, "You hate it?" He says, "Yeah, I hate everything about it." And then he comes out with Night Gallery.
Money.
For money.
He needed money. He needed to fix his roof. his daughter was going to college. That's what it's about.
It reminds me of that time that Melvin guy allegedly picked up Howard Hughes hitchhiking. And then they made a movie out of it, and he thought he claimed that Howard Hughes had left all his money to him when he gave him a ride out from the desert. But who can really be sure if Howard Hughes was really in that car with him? You know, could have been any old homeless bum saying
Yeah.
it was Howard Hughes.
You never, yeah. Or maybe it was somebody else besides Rod Serling. Although that fits because I saw him in an interview, and he was talking about his dissatisfaction with writing for television, and he said, you know, I can't remember the way he articulated it or his specific reasons, but he was frustrated. He was very frustrated with. He felt his freedom to write freely was that's redundant.
Yeah.
Was blocked.
Oh,
He felt-
because of the
he
advertisers.
felt the advertisers and the networks wouldn't let him really express himself the way he wanted to, so he was always constrained.
Well, that's
you know?
how David Chase felt, and then HBO allowed him to do The Sopranos. He had no complaints anymore about being constrained because he was
got to
writing
do
for
what he-
Rockford Files and
okay.
those kinds of bunch of shows. That show you like, that Alaska show, Paula,
Yeah.
and Nowhereville it's called,
No,
right?
north
North of the land.
Northern Exposure.
So he felt he was really constrained for being for 25 years in network television.
Mhm.
But once he got to Sopranos, HBO gave him the green light to do anything he
Yeah,
wanted to,
so-
dream sequences and
Yeah.
sex and drugs and
Would have been interesting if Rod Serling had gotten that opportunity.
right.
What we would have seen,
what
right?
Rod Serling would have
Yeah.
done if he wasn't constrained by network television on both his main programs.
Yeah, well, that's a good point of technology advancing, is like this freedom on platforms like HBO to express yourself in an adult way without worrying about advertisers shutting you down. I mean,
Yeah, no commercials either.
shows like Breaking Bad would never have happened on network TV.
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of things. There's so much darkness in those shows. You know, it
The non-commercial thing, Paula, matters too, because HBO has no commercials, so there's none of that. Like, we're stopping for a commercial break, and then we have to.
yeah. So you continue with that built-up tension.
Yeah, you just
till the end.
You can,
Yeah.
you can do The Sopranos with no commercials, so that it's better. Of course, Breaking Bad did have commercials though. but-
Yeah.
Which I don't know. It was a more regular show than Sopranos.
But
though.
that was still pretty dark.
Yeah.
It was
That
very
was-
dark.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was regular, but they did have commercials.
Oh, because
I
it
don't
was
remember commercials.
what show? What?
I
station?
binge watched the whole thing from
Oh.
end.
That's
It took me
why-
like 4 days.
That's
to
why
watch
you
it.
don't
AMC.
remember.
AMC.
Yeah,
AMC,
yeah,
I
they
think,
have
did have
commercials.
Mad Men and Breaking Bad were both AMC, and
Yeah.
they both had commercials.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
but
think
I
those-
think I only watched them with you on DVD.
DVR.
Yeah, so
DVR,
that would make
rather.
sense
Yeah.
that you didn't see the commercials.
We only
yeah.
watched the DVR.
Couldn't
version.
stop
yeah.
watching it from one episode to the next. It just
It was-
kept on
Did
going.
you
It was
see Better
amazing,
Call
wasn't it?
Saul?
I didn't like it as much. Yeah, I've seen
I
it.
didn't like it at first, but
Right.
as
It
it
got
sucks.
better. Yeah.
I thought it was great.
It's
I thought it
horrible,
was brilliant.
Sanford.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
thought
sorry.
it was great.
Mystery guest. Sorry about that.
Richard and I had
was an accident.
discussions about that last season, right, Richard? And
Yeah.
you seemed to like it.
That show
What did you
sucked.
think?
I did like it, yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
So glad it's gone.
I was
Well,
impressed.
we only watched the first few episodes.
No, I watched the later ones too to see how great it had become. It still sucked.
Yeah, you had to watch the whole progression.
Oh,
of
there
the
was no
story.
progression though.
There was.
Oh, it was horrifyingly bad. I like Bob Odenkirk
Yeah.
too. That movie he did a few years ago when he was going around killing people, that was a really good one. I forget what it's called, but it was like a million times better than Better Call Saul.
See, I didn't like that. But I
What?
liked Better Call Saul.
What the
Yeah.
fuck? Mystery guest.
I thought that was
Better Call Saul.
exploitation of violence. I didn't like it.
Every fucking movie you gave me to
What?
watch, every DVD you gave me to
But
watch,
I feel
85% of DVDs you gave me to watch were exploitations of violence.
But I
Am I
felt
right?
that in all those films there was something deeper. There was something else.
But you didn't
there.
deny that they were exploitations of violence, though.
There was still something, there was still something below. There was something more.
There was,
there
unlike that Bob Odenkirk
there's-
movie.
Yeah, I didn't think there was anything there. That's
You're-
all there
you're
was.
so
in that
You're
movie.
so right.
That's all.
You're so
there was
right.
in
You're
that
wrong.
film. No, I disagree with you. For example, I'll give you an example. Lucio Fulci is a film director from Italy who is often accused of being an exploitation filmmaker.
Died in a
But if
car
you-
accident, right?
No, if you look at his work, it's poetic. There is something about it that is truly sublime, and that's what draws me to it and fans of his work. It isn't that it's violent, you know? And I think that's
It's
true
the
of a lot of
poetic-
those Italian cop films. They're done in a kind of a style that is
Poetic?
It's no, maybe not poetic, but there's something
Sludgy?
extraordinary. There's something deeper going on. It isn't just violence. But I never really liked movies that were just violent. If there's not some,
I could have sworn those
substance or
18
something-
movies you recommended to me that were all about
'cause
violence.
you were missing the
the
deeper
deepness. I missed.
aspect of
I
it.
missed the
Yeah.
deepness of that.
I felt you.
I
Yeah,
saw the
I feel
surface
you.
You know,
violence,
sometimes-
violence, violence,
Yeah.
violence,
Sometimes
violence.
Greg will watch a movie and fast forward.
That's true.
I do
What's that to do with?
that. I
What's
do
that to do with anything? He's not denying they're all violence, violence, violence. The things he
Yeah, I
recommended
know,
to
but
me.
if you weren't listening to the dialogue, you
Yeah.
weren't getting the deeper, the deep dive.
I missed the deepness, I guess, on those 18 films.
The New York.
No, that's
Ripper.
not a pleasant film. That's not.
Does it
that's
say
not
he's
one that I
poetic?
would- that's not one. That's not a poetic film. That's a nasty movie.
So you probably recommend it to me then.
No, not that. That's
If
one
it's
I might.
nasty.
That's one I don't think I would recommend.
Every
but-
single movie you recommended me was nasty. It was always like some
He made-
horrifying thing that I didn't want to see. I didn't want to. It was almost like Black Mirror
He
pig
made
fucking.
a film. Who? Jennifer O'Neill. Remember her? He
Of
made
course,
a movie
Summer
with
42.
Jennifer O'Neill called The Psychic.
Oh, that's
it's
a
a
good one.
beautiful. It's a
And-
masterpiece.
and it's deep.
And yeah, in that
You
movie,
throw that masterpiece word
it's
around
a great
pretty
film.
easily,
It's a
you know.
great film. I don't think so. I think that.
You said earlier that woman made a masterpiece from the 70s interview woman.
But,
You
but
used to-
of the
accent.
numbers of films I've seen, there are very few movies that I would say are
You
masterpieces.
seem to bring that
in my
masterpiece
opinion.
word up a lot, Mr.
Because I
Guest.
focus on the movies that I think are masterpieces.
How many masterpieces are there?
I have no idea.
Are there 100?
But in
Ballpark?
in that film, The Psychic, this woman starts to have these foreshadowings of these little images, these flashes, and it
Sinister and disturbing,
It's
it said.
really,
But
it's
deep,
really
probably
brilliant.
deep though. Also,
It's like Alfred Hitchcock, but it's very difficult to do. If I tell you what it's about, it would ruin the whole thing. But
Psychic. You own this?
I do, yeah.
So I can
it's
borrow
a
it
great
then.
movie, yeah. You can borrow
Is it something I can play on my
Yes, you can.
pedestrian
Yes, you
domestic DVD
Yes,
Blu-ray
you
player?
can. And Richard, on my way here, I realized I forgot the Boris Karloff Blu-ray again. I'm going to bring it next time, I promise.
Sure.
I'm really sorry.
I believe you.
I'm sorry.
I want to borrow the Psychic. It sounds
It's a great
disturbing.
movie.
Is it deep?
Yeah.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
disturbing. And it's a masterpiece?
It's a beautiful film. Maybe, yeah.
Close to a
Maybe,
masterpiece,
yeah.
and it's deep and
Yeah,
disturbing.
For,
That
a
sounds
be-
like- it sounds
for,
good.
for a low-budget movie, I think it is a masterpiece, yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So you got to take that into account how low budget it is.
So Richard,
Yeah.
do we have anything else on our list? I'm sure you do. We
Can I bring up the thing about Silvio Berlusconi and Ted Kaczynski?
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
can bring that up. I
masculinity.
did.
That's
stuff.
something that I discussed with a number of people.
Yeah.
So everybody, without realizing it, puts forth ideas in what they write about or what they do in the world. So this particular writer said, let's look and see what Silvio Berlusconi, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Cormac McCarthy all had in common regarding what they projected as terms of masculinity. And I thought this was very good writing. The author said, first of all, let's look at the problem. Men are socialized, or have been for many years, that they're valuable because of their physical strength and they have the capacity to do violence. But now in the year 2023, you don't need their strength as much. We have robots and we have heavy machinery, and their capacity for violence is becoming less and less valuable because we have things like drones and we have all kinds of mechanical warfare. So what are men needed for? What is their value in life? And so he looks and he says, now let's look at these three people. According to the Unabomber, his alternative to the fact that men are losing their value is men are becoming enraged and twisted, and they start fantasizing about a truer, more authentic past. They want a revolution that'll bring us back to the authenticity of the past. And it has produced school shooters, religious terrorists, and atrocities. In Berlusconi, he sees men as a kind of rebellious clown who is masculinity is machismo, and I have these bunga bunga parties, and I am this ultra sexualized male. Okay? It's not surprising that other leaders have done this same kind of masculine burlesque, like Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. Now, Cormac McCarthy's novels were very masculine because they put you into this setting where violence was needed in order to survive, like No Country for Old Men or The Road. And so it's interesting that writers and people in the media are reacting to this thing about men losing their value all in different ways.
And, you know, and right. So in the media, you can portray men or women any way that you can imagine them. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy for people to see movies. I remember one time, I mean, I dated someone, and he told me that watching violence, you know, watching really severe violence in a movie made him sexually excited. And I mean, this is what we're looking at in a world where we're presenting all this violence. I mean, maybe it doesn't result in that in everyone. This guy was pretty sick. But it's showing that it's, you're saying it's necessary in these situations, but the more you see it, the more it becomes ordinary. Like you become desensitized to it. So, I mean, how much violence, and especially in video games and so forth, how much violence can you see and experience before you're desensitized to it, and you think, and you don't even maybe realize that when you go out there with a gun and you shoot somebody, that's going to be real blood. Do you know what I mean? Because when you imagine it, it's something detached from you. But when you actually go out and do it, I mean, has anybody who's ever committed one of these crimes said, I didn't realize how much blood there was going to be, or that people would scream, or that, you know, because people get inured to things by watching them, like the violence like that.
Why equate masculinity with violence? I mean, that's one of the last things I think of when I think of masculine versus feminine virtues. I don't think of a man I admire as being violent. Just the opposite.
Well,
I think it's
It's the first thing I think of.
Well,
Because men and women, if you think about the amount of violence from men compared to the amount of violence from women, it's such a huge chasm that first thing I think of is that men are been throughout history the warmongers, the rapists, the assaulters, the murderers, the domestic abusers, the serial killers. There's way more violence from men.
Yeah,
way more.
but those aren't the men you admire. That's what I think Mystery Guest is saying. That the men he admires are not those.
Is that what
men.
you're saying?
I don't equate masculinity with violence.
Well, I
per se.
do.
I agree that historically, I don't know though. I think there are some violent women as well. But
that's why I said that there's some violence from women. But I'm saying that the majority of the violence, the vast majority of the violence throughout history is from men.
But what I would say, whether we like it or not, and a lot of people want to deny biology these days. There is a difference between men and women.
Of course.
And we're trying to deny.
As the only woman here.
This phenomenon that we're seeing now isn't new. You know, the Romans had a period of, I can't think of emasculating rather men. They did. And Gibbon wrote about it in The Fall of the Roman Empire, you know, and when they declined, there was a reaction against that, just like there is now. And I think it's a sign right now that we've lost faith, that we've lost confidence in our civilization. It's a very common thing. It's not unusual.
Yeah, it's happened before.
Yeah, it's just it's a phase that we're going through right now, that we're questioning our traditional values and we're reevaluating them. The Greeks did this, the Egyptians did this, the Romans did this. They rose and they fell, and I think we are in a process of decline.
Yeah.
And when civilizations are in a period of decline, they start to rebel against their traditions and they lose faith in their society. And we're doing this now. I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's just what it is.
Well, and since I wrote to you about that, I was thinking a little bit about, said, what about the Greek and Roman philosophers? What about the people who, Galileo, all those people?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time that they existed, like at the same time as the Roman philosophers existed, there were gladiators too.
Yeah.
So it was not like one or the other. There's always been that kind of masculinity, and we call it toxic masculinity now. But I think I'm getting away from that term and thinking more of it as hyper masculinity. Whereas I admire the people in history with brains. I don't admire the people in history that went over the mountains with elephants and
to me, restraint is a masculine virtue.
Restraint,
and
exactly.
discipline, and rectitude. So that's a great word.
Ideally, it is.
It could
Ideally,
almost.
ideally, it is. But basically, men are psychotic maniacs.
Yeah,
Let's
I wonder
face facts
if you.
here.
I wonder if on an island, like Lord of the Flies, if it was all women, they wouldn't do the same thing.
No, there'd
Oh,
be,
that's irrelevant. I'm
that's-
talking about how things actually are in the world, not the fucking island thing where we put men and women in the island and we see who's going to be more savage. I mean, forgetting
those
that,
are
I'm
just
talking
the
about
roles,
real life.
Those are the roles that men have assumed. The breadwinner, the warrior, we're in charge.
Well,
That's been most of societies have been patriarchal. So if you're a patriarch, you're going to be aggressive. You're going to be more violent.
What I'm
You're
saying
gonna
is that's
step on
that's
people
right,
more.
and right. That's why I'm
But
saying
if the roles
masculinity
were
goes.
women are capable of that. I'm just
Of
saying.
course, they're capable of
Yeah.
anything.
yeah. I mean,
Anything a
that's,
man is capable of,
Yeah.
a woman is capable
Right.
of. What I'm saying is, in real life, all through history, men are the more violent.
Yeah, that's a
than
fair
women.
point. I agree with that.
There's
Yeah.
more bloodshed. There's more serial killing, murdering, domestic
Yep.
abuse, rape, assault.
I agree.
Fights, bar fights, and war.
Yeah.
Did I say war already?
You did, but
Okay.
you're right. You're right. No, I don't disagree with you. I just think there are more nuances to consider in that.
yeah. And,
There's
Yeah.
nuances, but I'm saying the vast majority of violence
and I mean,
is masculine
right.
driven.
But femininity and masculinity are not. They're not a one-dimensional thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
women can be caring and nurturing, and they can also be aggressive.
Yeah.
And think about how they compare a mother to a bear, a mother bear.
Yeah.
Protecting her children. A mother she can lift up a refrigerator to save her child. But in the meantime, everybody is multidimensional.
Would you say that when a mother bear does that, she is assuming a masculine role?
no?
Is that a masculine virtue?
No,
Not
and
a
I-
virtue, but a characteristic?
No,
If
no, and I think that's a misconception, and I don't think it's a feminine thing if a man cries when he feels sad or hurt or somebody dies. I don't think it's feminine of a man to cry, and I don't think it's masculine of a woman to protect her young. You know,
well, a man crying like Mel Gibson cries, and he's not ashamed of it. He doesn't think it's feminine. It's just he's a macho guy who happens to cry because he has emotions.
But
and
I
he's a drunk.
I think like the
Hey,
Greeks,
I mean, he's on the wagon now.
I think the Greeks and the Chinese did divide. They did divide the masculine from the feminine virtues, and I think they would say crying is a feminine virtue. It's not negative, But that why can't men have certain feminine qualities? I certainly have a lot of feminine characteristics,
Well, we
but
both
I'm not
have.
a woman.
We all
right?
have both
Just-
both
yeah.
hormones.
Like
we
what?
Have,
Like
I
what
have,
characteristics
I have
do you have there?
testosterone and
I'm
estrogen,
I'll tell
and
you,
so do you.
I'll tell you, I'm a very sensitive person. I'm a very caring
That's
and nurturing
feminine?
person. If you were to look at that classical dichotomy of what the ancients believed the masculine and feminine virtues were, yes.
But why
if you accept that?
Why are
And-
you always recommending all those super violent movies to me with men punching each other and killing each other?
Because
and
as
shooting
I
each
told
other?
you, you're missing the point. There is a lot more to it than just violence.
Maybe
'Cause I
you need
actually
to watch
really
them
don't.
together.
Yeah, I
Maybe
really.
you need to watch them together.
Yeah, if
We can male bond that way.
Yes.
yeah, if you heard my commentary, I think you might say, "Oh, I understand." Clockwork Orange. When I saw that film, there was a woman from China who watched that film with me at the one of the local theaters, and she said that was one of the most moral films I have ever seen in my life. She said I was deeply moved by that film. That's how I felt when I saw it. Nobody else I know they see it's violent. It's
Extremely violent. You could say ultra violent.
I think it's a moral film about choice, about that
you can
that
have a moral
goodness is
film about
chosen.
choice and have an intense ultra violence through the whole damn thing.
Because it's just confronting the darker aspects of our humanity.
Well,
but
I'm just
I don't
saying,
think
it's a
that
really
it's just
And Young-
exploitation.
And
There's
Young
more to
says
it
we
than
have
that.
to do that in order to be a
Jesus
full
fucking
person.
That's
Christ.
right.
It's-
Confront the
it's-
shadow self.
It's a sick,
Confront.
twisted movie.
I don't
mystery
see
I
that.
keep trying. I keep trying, and I keep.
I'm
keep
thinking of using
failing.
parts of that for my psychology class if I can get away with it
Well, good luck, mystery guest.
for high school.
Yeah.
Good
so
luck.
Classical
thank you for
conditioning.
being with us, and this has been the Common Book Show, and we are all signing off now. Ta ta.
Ta-ta.
Ta ta.